Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Can you hear me? There we go. Welcome to the Rules and Legislative Oversight hearing. Today in attendance we have myself. I'm subbing in as chair for the committee, representing the 4th District, Councilman Ramos representing the 14th District, Councilman Burnett representing the 8th District, and Councilman Torrance representing the 9th District? 7th District. Sorry about that, Councilman. We'll be hearing 2 bills today. We're going to start off with I have Nina Themelis representing the Mayor's Office. I have Matt Stegman representing the Council President's Office. And Natasha Mihu representing the Mayor's Office as well, Sophia as well. We're going to start off with our first bill today, Bill 22-0248, Charter Amendment, Baltimore City Police Department, Local Control Establishment. Got it, thank you. For the purpose of creating a Baltimore City Police Department as an agency and instrumentality of the City of Baltimore, and submitting this amendment to the qualified voters of the city for adoption or rejection. This is a bill sponsored by the administration. So I will first turn it over to Nina or Natasha if you'd like to have some opening statements on the bill. Hold on, I'm not sure if the microphone may not.
Mic closer. There we go. Good afternoon, Natasha May, Director of Government Relations for Mayor Scott. This bill would put it to the voters to decide whether or not the Baltimore Police Department becomes an agency and instrumentality of the city rather than the agency and instrumentality of the state as it currently stands. So very simple charter amendment.
Very simple, thank you. Any questions from the committee? It's a pretty straightforward bill, a one-liner of sorts. As far as agency reports. Okay, we'll start off with any reports from the law department. Hillary.
Elena DePietro from the Law Department. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on this bill. The Law Department approves the bill for formal legal sufficiency. It's an appropriate way to create an agency of the city.
Thank you, Elena. We'll go over to the police department.
Yeah. All right. Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Michelle Wurzberger. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Baltimore Police Department. We stand by our bill report that basically says we have no objection to this.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. And that is all we have by way of agency reports. Any questions of the agencies? Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to make sure that it was super clear to everybody here, but also the public, right? Is my understanding, just for the mayor's office to explain, this is to declare our intent, right? To have local control over the police department. There is still work that is going to have to be done at the General Assembly level to actually make it happen, correct?
Yeah, so we do have a local control advisory board that is meeting, has been meeting for a number of months and will continue to meet to determine exactly how local control would look. And depending on how that looks, there would need to be additional changes. But the group is continuing to study that. And I believe you'll have some public testimony on behalf of the local control advisory board to talk about that some more. But you're right, this charter amendment is the first step in that process where it focuses simply on putting it to the voters as to whether or not the police department should be an agency and instrumentality of the city rather than an agency and instrumentality of the state. But the work would continue in order to determine what additional changes in management look like on the local level. Thank you for
Sure.
urging that clarification.
If I could follow up, so we're doing a charter amendment now and not 2 years from now after we're done with the work, just to show our intent in terms of letting the General Assembly know and whoever else that this is what we want? I mean, I'm just curious as to the timing, that's all.
Yes, similar, I think an easy way to think about this is similar to, I believe the General Assembly passed legislation that would put it to the voters about whether or not they wanted to have recreational cannabis. But the actual logistics of what that looked like would be separate pieces of legislation that set up the organization, the protocols, all those sorts of things would be done legislatively, whereas the ballot measure is seeking voters' approval for moving forward with the process itself.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much for clarifying. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing no questions, we need to open up the floor to public testimony. I don't know that we have any, but is there any public testimony?
There's also some who signed up online.
There are also people sign up online. I see Dana Moore, Director.
Yes.
Dana, please go ahead.
Thank you for recognizing me. Thank you very much. I am here wearing my co-chair of the Local Control Advisory Board hat. My co-chair is Ashia Parker, and I'm not sure she was able to join today, but we do have a joint statement, and I'll try to read it quickly and move through. We do wish to convey our support for Council Bill 22-0248. Council Bill 22-0248 amends the Baltimore City Charter by establishing the Baltimore Police Department as one of the executive departments listed in Article 7 of the Baltimore City Charter. And this is consistent with the goal and purpose of the Local Control Advisory Board. The LCAB was established by the Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021, the purpose of which is to establish the Baltimore Police Department as an instrumentality of Baltimore City rather than the state of Maryland, as Director Mayhew has already shared. This is contingent upon passage of an amendment to the Charter of Baltimore City that provides for the transfer of control of the Baltimore Police Department to Baltimore City and its ratification by the voters. And so that's why we're doing this charter amendment now, as opposed to waiting 2 years from now. The act also established an advisory board on the, and this is the official title, Advisory Board on the Transfer of the Control of the Police Department of Baltimore City. And our role is to study potential issues related to the transfer. The Local Control Advisory Board is comprised by a fairly wide swath and representation of Baltimore City. We have members from government, neighborhood associations, and from nonprofit, not-for-profit organizations. For example, board members include Senator Corey McCray, Delegate Stephanie Smith, City Council President Nick Mosby, Mayor Brandon Scott, City Solicitor Jim Shea, Police Commissioner Michael Harrison, Muncie Director Shantae Jackson, Lydia Walther Rodriguez of CASA, Ray Kelly, who is the Executive Director of the Citizens Policing Project, Mark Washington, who's Executive Director of CHUM, Trey Murphy of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and Robert Cherry from the Fraternal Order of Police. We also have one ex officio member, and he might be on, I'm not sure, but his name is Tyler Adamson, and Tyler represents the Citizens Advisory Commission for Public Safety. To date, and I think we've been meeting since November or December of 2021. To date, the Local Control Advisory Board has studied potential issues regarding the fiscal, legal, and administrative impact of the city of Baltimore gaining control of its police department. As it now stands, we are the only jurisdiction that does not have control of its police department. In answer to the questions regarding the potential impact, the LCAB received presentations from the Office of the City Solicitor, the Department of Finance, the city's BBMR, and the monitor of the federal consent decree, which has oversight of the Baltimore Police Department. Together, all collectively, those presentations have established that there will be no negative impact arising from the city's gaining control of its police department. For that reason and many others, the members of the Local Control Advisory Board, when they had the opportunity to review the
Director Moore, you froze. We may have lost Director Moore temporarily.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you now. You can continue.
Okay. Yes. Bottom line is the members of the Local Control Advisory Board are in support of the charter amendment, and we are here today asking that the committee support the bills moving forward and eventual approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Moore. We're back to public testimony. The next person I've got on the list is Toby Ditz. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Toby. And that is all I've got. I see Sophia G. Of course, remember GR, but you're working. All right. Any other testimony before we close the public testimony period? Mr. Kelly, please state your name and proceed to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ray Kelly, and I am a member of the Local Control Advisory Board, and I will echo everything that Chair Moore has said and just remind the council and the committee that this is about accountability after a tragic history with Baltimore Police Department, and we have to recognize that at some point we have to build this trust with the residents, and to remove that extra level of proposed accountability from the state and bring that access and that ability to make change in the department is important to ever moving all of our reform and accountability efforts forward. So I just wanted you guys to consider, as we are working diligently in the city to rebuild our police department, it's also important that we recognize there's going to be a first step of rebuilding trust with this immediate community. So we need that access here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. With that, we will conclude public testimony, and I will entertain a motion to move the bill.
So move, Torrance.
Second.
Moved by Torrance, second by Ramos. Conway, aye. Torrance.
Aye.
Ramos.
Aye.
Burnett. Aye. The bill moves favorably, unanimously.
Four votes in the affirmative, no negatives. We can go to second reader on Monday night.
Thank you. So this bill moves to second reader. And we will move to our next bill for the night, or the afternoon, Council Bill 22-0238, Charter Amendment, Inspector General Advisory Board, for the purpose of altering the method by which individuals are selected to be members of the advisory board that appoints or removes the Inspector General, requiring a member of the City Council to consider certain factors when nominating a candidate for the advisory board, setting term limits and staggering certain items, and submitting this amendment to the qualified voters of the city for adoption or rejection. This bill was sponsored by Councilmember Ramos, and I'll hand the floor over to Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee, for hearing this bill, and thanks all of the agencies and others who've worked on this. Just to give you, again, some background, the Office of the Inspector General investigates waste, fraud, and abuse in city government. It was established in 2005 by executive order under Mayor O'Malley, and then a charter amendment made the Office of the Inspector General an independent body. It is designed to oversee the activities of the Office of the Inspector General. The advisory board is designed to oversee the activities of the Office of the Inspector General, to appoint the Inspector General, to provide guidance to the office, evaluate performance, and review and revise the annual budget. To avoid any perception of conflict or influence of any investigations against us or our peers, the Office of the Inspector General should not have elected officials, their designees, lobbyists, city or state employees, or anyone who does business with the city on this board. This charter amendment makes sure that that is the case, and also creates a new process for selecting board members. Out of 25 Office of the Inspector Generals, only 2, and all of these cities that have them, have elected officials on their advisory boards. So it is not best practice to do this. I do want to thank our colleagues who currently serve on the advisory board. They've really done an admirable job, and it has taken a lot of time away from their constituents. And so this is not about them. This is about the concept of making sure that we have zero perception of conflict. Currently, the advisory board includes the designee or the mayor or the designee, city solicitor, comptroller or designee, city council president or designee, member of the city council appointed by the council president, the dean of the University of Baltimore Law School, and the dean of the University of Maryland Law School if the mayor and the city council president agree. So this bill proposes a completely different 7-member advisory board. Members must not be elected officials or city or state employees, designees of city or state employees or elected officials, lobbyists, or a person running for elected office, or anyone doing business with the city. Members must also have some familiarity or experience with inspector generals, law, ethics, city government, and performance review. So that's the first part of the bill. The second part of the bill creates a different way of nominating the members of this advisory board. Each council member will nominate one person from each of their districts that fit the criteria outlined in the charter amendment. The specific process for selection is not dictated in the charter amendment. Each nominee is placed into one of the following groups, and then the chair of the ethics board randomly selects, like literally from a hat, one nominee from each of these groups. So we've grouped them into 5 groups. Districts 1, 2, and 3 would be in one group. District 4, 5, and 6 would be another group, et cetera, et cetera. The remaining 2 members are selected at random by the chair of the ethics board from names given by the Baltimore City Bar, the Association of Fraud Examiners, and the Association of Certified Public Accountants. So given we did get great feedback from the OIG's office, as well as the law department and the Board of Ethics. And so the amendments before the committee include some of the changes that they had asked for in the bill. So just briefly, we have removed, in the amendments, we have removed the chair of the ethics board should not be removing members. The only role that the chair of the ethics board should be doing is just randomly selecting so that they're not making decisions. So it would be up to the members of the advisory board to remove a member for cause. That's in the amendments. The process for nominating of the people from the Bar Association, Association of Fraud Examiners, and the Association of Certified Public Accountants is now also spelled out in the amendments. It wasn't in the original bill. The training will not be conducted by the chair of the Board of Ethics. It would be conducted by the OIG. And the entities doing business with the city cannot serve on the OIG advisory board. I had not put that in the original bill. So when this charter amendment passes the Baltimore City Council, it will be placed as a question on the November 2022 ballot for the voters to approve or reject. We are on a time frame here in terms of making sure that this gets passed by the council before the end of the month. In general, this is a fair way to select this important independent body. The current members of the advisory committee have served admirably, and however, we should avoid perception of conflict or influence by ensuring this advisory board is independent. And this process does put in that process. So thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. This was my written testimony that I pretty much read into the record, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Member Ramos. Any questions of the bill sponsor? No questions? All right. With that, we'll move on to agency reports, starting with ethics. We cannot hear
Not on.
you.
Use that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Mara Ford. I'm the Ethics Officer for the Ethics Board. The Ethics Board does not oppose contingent on the proposed amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Next up, we've got the Office of the Inspector General.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman Conway and members of the Rules and Legislative Oversight Committee. The OIG is very happy to be here to support Bill number 22-238 as we supported Resolution 1808, which made the Office of the Inspector General independent. The OIG was informed back when the original bill passed by this very same legislative body in July of 2018, that sometimes you need to first get the bill passed, and then there's a process similar to stepping stones to reach the correct outcome. I am very grateful for Councilwoman Ramos and the many council people that have supported this major step up. The citizens of Baltimore passed the charter amendment by 83% in 2018, the largest of any vote that year. And what citizens were voting for was independence. Nowhere in the 117 words presented on the ballot were the words advisory board, nor was it discussed. Rather, the first words really set the tone. The purpose of creating an independent Office of the Inspector General. I am asking this committee to please keep moving the accountability and the oversight forward for the city of Baltimore. Best practices are what this great city should always be striving for. And right now, we stand alone with the model we have. The president of the Association of Inspector Generals was interviewed last night, and he felt our current model is fundamentally flawed. This new bill safeguards the integrity of both the OIG and the board members. No one can deny the perceived and actual conflict of interest that exists with the current model. In order for there to be an independent Inspector General, there must be an independent board made up of Baltimore citizens who do not work for city government. So, as a result, the OIG enthusiastically endorses this bill with the amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cumming. Next up, I've got law.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Hillary Ruley for the Law Department. We submitted several necessary amendments, and Councilwoman Ramos incorporated them into her package of amendments she's submitting to the committee. So with them, we could approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Is Yvonne Brooks here?
Yeah.
Yvonne, is there more that you want to add? I guess you're with OIG, so you would. Okay, great. I just noted I had you on a list of folks. Next up, I've got finance.
Good afternoon, Mara James, Assistant Budget Director. Finance stands by the report. We do not oppose this legislation. I believe that the sponsor and the Inspector General both spoke to this, that there are various models for having advisory and oversight of this, and so that's what we found in our research as well, and this is just another way to revise that. But we do not oppose this legislation. We have not seen the amendments, but assume that they have not changed our stance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mara. All right, any questions of the agencies? I'll just sort of make a statement. I appreciate Councilman Ramos, you bringing this bill forward. I think it's important for us, important, I think, for the reputation of the work that the OIG does, but I think also important for the reputation of our city. And the perception of impropriety, I think, is really, really important. I decided to co-sponsor this because I think right along those lines, I think it's important that the OIG be separated from any of those concerns and be able to make those important decisions in a way that doesn't have a patina of political whatever. So really appreciate you bringing this forward. I did have, and this is a concern or question that I had initially, and I'm curious how we can fix this, if at all possible. But one of the components of the bill separates between each council member the ability to put a pick forward, and then from that pick of 3, 1 will be selected to be put on the board. I noted, and we spoke about this before, that for the 13th and 14th district, it's a 50% chance that that member would be selected. Just as a matter of fairness, I want to figure out a way to make it fair across all council members and all council districts. So I'm really curious if we can find a way to do that.
Yeah, and we had talked about, if we needed to regroup them in different, maybe put 4 in each one. I mean, the math is the math. So
right.
That is not anything that, it's fine if we can do that. I know we also had a question about, well, how about we just put all 15 in a hat and then they just draw 5? Grouping it like this makes sure, I think that, if, for instance, one person doesn't put in their pick, which I hope everybody does because this is super important, that they're, that there is, a better chance of, everybody would have a better chance of getting their pick in a grouping situation rather than just putting everybody, in a hat like that.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I also just, it's an interesting way to sort of make up a board, and so,
Yeah, we also didn't want it too big. Like, we could have had picks from all districts like we just did in another bill.
Right.
And that was not going to be ideal. It's also not the standard when it comes to OIG boards to have a huge board.
When you were doing the research on this bill, are there any other, not necessarily OIG boards or oversight boards, but are there any other boards that are sort of structured this way, or is this sort of generally a new approach?
This is a new approach, especially for our city. We don't usually do boards and commissions this way.
Okay.
And in terms of OIG boards, again, there's only 2, including Baltimore City, that have electeds on their boards. So that is clear that that's not the standard. And then all of the others have, various different ways that they appoint people. Some of them are mayoral appointments, but some of them are done I believe Montgomery County just, waves their wand and there's people, so it's not that simple, but it's, so there's the range of complex to very simple.
Awesome. Thank you. IG comment.
It's one of the counties, another county in the state. It must have been another place that I had heard that about.
IG comments. We can't hear you.
You need a microphone.
Yep.
In the state of Maryland, there's the education IG, there's Baltimore County IG, and there's Montgomery County IG. Baltimore County and Montgomery do not have oversight boards, and I do not believe that the state does either. Another correction, I will just have to say that
sure.
In one of the responses it did say that Miami reported to the city council and to the mayor. That is completely not true. They do not report to them. Because I actually spoke to the Inspector General of Miami, and that has never been. So.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? Excuse me, Councilman Ramos, do you want to talk through the amendments that you're currently considering?
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, before we go to
Sure.
the amendments, Councilman Torrance.
So I have a question about the removal of the deans, because
Yeah.
the Baltimore City Bar isn't representative of everyone in the legal community. I just want to be classify that because we do have a monumental bar association, which represents lawyers of color. I just want to make sure that we're mindful of representation in terms of who we select from the various organizations. Whereas with the deans, they have access to a broader swath of membership throughout the entire law community in terms of expertise and opportunities. Case in point, the current dean of the University of Baltimore School of Law, which we're both happily alumnus of, is a former member of the DOJ. So just want to make sure that we're mindful of that too in terms of representation. So
Yeah.
I think I might propose an amendment to bring back the deans as well.
Sure, and we talked about that, so I appreciate you thinking about it. The thinking around removal of the deans was that they're not specialists in fraud, accounting, all of that. They may be somebody who's appointed, but they're not specialists. And the current deans, it says the deans and not their designees. So even if they wanted to choose somebody else in the field from what they represent in the current law, they couldn't do that. It has to be themselves. But Councilman, I'd be happy to talk with you more about that. It's certainly something that I would make sure that we're working together on that. Sure.
Perfect. Excellent. Any other questions?
The mayor's office just emailed me that there may be Article 4, Section 6B, Hillary, that we don't have.
Yeah, I just saw it and responded. Certainly that would be a welcome amendment, but it's not necessary because yours will be latter enacted and more specific. And since they're both in the charter, the latter enacted and more specific would be seen to govern. So it won't be a conflict, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to add it and make sure it's clear.
Okay, and then there was also a question about the enactment date. We don't have an enactment date here. We also don't have an enactment date in the one that we just passed. The charter already says that when you're doing a charter amendment, this is my understanding, Hillary, from your email, that it's automatically 30 days after the passage of the charter amendment that is basically the enactment date, unless we say something different, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So I didn't put an enactment date in.
No, and to be clear, you can't make it sooner than the 30 days.
Sure.
The Maryland Constitution says once you pass a local charter amendment, it goes into effect 30 days after it's approved, assuming it's approved, then approved by the voters 30 days later. That's in the Maryland Constitution. But for example, like our budget one, you can say this will be effective 5 years from now. You can, just because the charter amendment is adopted and passed doesn't mean that all the items in it go into effect that day. If you say nothing, then it will.
Sure.
If you say something later, that will govern.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So I wanted to have that discussion about the committee because it was a question that came to me about that as well.
Okay, Councilwoman, do you want to go into the amendments?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yep.
Absolutely. Let me just pull them up real quick. I don't know if everybody has them in front of them, and I don't know if we want to share them online for the public. I just need to pull them up.
No worries.
Okay. So council members were sent the amendments and also the interlineated. So I don't know if you want to share that with the public or if we're just going to walk through them. Okay. So amendment number 1 strikes the language that said that the person on the advisory board has to be a Baltimore City resident for 2 years. We can't put duration on that, and so it is deleted to say that we are just adding is a Baltimore City resident, period, and that is allowed. The second amendment is just clarifying that a person who does business with the city cannot be on the advisory board. That was missing from the original bill, and I have put it in on the amendments. The amendment number 3 clarifies the method by which the Baltimore City Bar Association, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, and the Maryland Association of Certified Public Accountants, how they nominate their positions. So basically, that the Baltimore City Bar nominates from, the Executive Council nominates their person, the fraud examiners nominates their person, and then the Board of Regents of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, and then the Maryland Association of Public Accountants is nominated by the Board of Directors. So it's very clear, much clearer what the nomination process is for those 3 entities. And then amendment number 4, it strikes the language saying that the chair of the ethics board could remove members for cause, and says that the advisory board itself may remove members for cause. So it takes out the role of the chair of ethics in any removal necessary. Now, for cause means really anything from they ended up running for office, so they need to be removed, to whether it's some sort of misconduct, right? So it could be any of those, and that's for cause is a standard language for that. And then amendment number 5 also takes out the chair of the Board of Ethics from doing the training needed for the advisory board, and it would actually be the Office of the Inspector General doing the training. And those are the amendments.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any questions about the amendments? All right, seeing no questions, we're going to move on to the public testimony portion. And I think we still have the same folks. Yep. All right.
We also have people online.
Yep. So we don't have any public testimony. If there's anyone here to testify, please feel free to walk up to the podium.
We have a lot of people online.
And if you are online, please use the raise hand function and we will acknowledge you in the meeting. All right, I see we're going to go to Aaron DeGraffenwright first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to everybody. I apologize I couldn't be there in person today. I just wanted to add the comment that I was going to have is along the same lines as Councilman Torrance, because just to make sure that we consider inclusion of the minority bar associations. I'm personally a recent past president of Monumental City Bar. We work closely with the Alliance of Black Women Attorneys, and less frequently, but still occasionally with the LGBTQ bar. And so my comment is less to advocate for including and adding back in the law school deans, though that I think would also accomplish some of this purpose, but to maintain our eye on diversity and inclusion for this board. And as we thought about it and talked it over, it could be essentially putting these bar associations and the fraud examiners and those groups into similar pods like the council districts for random selection. But it was one item that we hadn't got to engage with Councilwoman Ramos on, and we wanted to just bring it up here.
I definitely would not be opposed to that. I think that that's a great idea, and happy to work with the Council President's office on that. I just wanted to note that in the original bill, we're super clear that council members have to select based on not just qualification, but also diversity of the district. And so we do have language in there, but I'm totally fine with looking at other additional ways that we can make sure that the board reflects the city.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. And
Thank you.
we're next going to go on to Tyler Lane.
Thank you for recognizing me, Chairman. I'm Tyler Lane. I'm in Odette Ramos's district and representing the Able Improvement Association. We just wanted to voice our support for this bill and the independence of the Office of the Inspector General. We are looking to support any means that promote trust in government and good governance, and find that at this point in time, this is a crucial bill to improving trust in that government and the perception of trust in that government, as well as the substance of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got Suzanne Bailey.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing us to testify. I live, work, and socialize in Baltimore. It is a city I love despite its many imperfections. But one thing that brings me hope in Baltimore is the work of the Office of the Inspector General, which helps to protect us, the taxpayers. It also helps to provide more confidence and hope in our local government, which was just referenced. And it was established in 2007, but we want to continue to improve the Office of the Inspector General. And one way to do that is to have the makeup of the advisory board to better reflect the city's population and to remove any possible conflicts of individuals. And transparency and confidence are so important to us as residents of Baltimore, and passing this bill with the amendments will help provide more transparency, fairness, and confidence in the OIG to conduct its mission to investigate waste and fraud in city government. I'm asking your support for this bill with its amendments.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and we have one call-in.
Number ends in 03. You can unmute yourself by
So the person with a number ending in 03, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6. All right, no response. Anyone else, if
I have
you...
two more. Dr. Hathaway?
Hello. Oh.
Who are you two?
Dr. Hathaway and Bishop Nunez.
All right, so we'll find Dr. Hathaway.
Thought I saw him earlier.
Dave McClintock is on the line, the one ending in 03.
Oh, David, can you repeat your name?
Yes, sir. It's David McClintock. I'm in support of 220238. I'm a former Inspector General of Baltimore City. I've been in the Inspector General business for more than 12 years, and I couldn't be prouder of what I hear today. The development of a healthy Inspector General in any jurisdiction is a process. And Bill 22-0238 is a definitive step in the right direction in developing and maintaining a healthy Office of Inspector General. So I'm in full support of that bill.
Thank you, David. And Mr. Hathaway, are we able to find him?
I thought I saw him earlier. Dr. Hathaway?
All right, and who was the other person?
I just got a note that Bishop Nunez was not able to join, but I know Act Now, who he is the head of, did submit testimony in favor.
All right. With that, we are going to conclude public testimony. We're not going to, we got a little bit more work to do on this bill. So what we're going to do is I'm going to circle back with Chairman Schleifer and figure out if we can get this announced for its next hearing on Monday, the Monday council meeting, so that we can make sure we can get it to the third reader by the 25th. All right?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. With that, any other questions, comments, or otherwise from the committee? All right, with that, without objection, we will adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.